Hello, folks. Welcome back to World War II TV. It is a June the 4th, part of this 80th anniversary week. I'm at the Juno Centre here in Courcelles, sunny Courcelles, talking to Alexander Fitzgerald Black, a regular World War II TV guest who is going to tell us about his role here at the Juno Centre and a little bit about the Canadians on D-Day. So, good morning, Alex. A bit busy, but what are you up to this week?
Good morning, Woody. I'm really pleased to be here in Normandy this week. 80th anniversary of D-Day and the Battle of Normandy. We are really excited to be welcoming something like 15 Canadian veterans here over the next couple of days with the official delegation. As well as yesterday, we welcomed Royal Winnipeg Rifle Jim Parks, who actually landed on the beach right behind me 80 years ago. Took him out in a duck amphibious truck on the beach, went offshore and came back around and landed on the beach 80 years later with him. It was quite an emotional moment. Amazing once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. It was a brilliant sunny day. You could see we're at the western end of Juno Beach here. You could see clear down to Saint-Aubin and the eastern end of Juno Beach. It was amazing. The Juno Beach Center is Canada's Second World War Museum on the D-Day landing beaches. That's where we are today. It's built on top of a German strongpoint. Strongpoint 31, where the Canadians, the Royal Winnipeg Rifles, and the 1st Hussars assaulted on D-Day. Our museum's been around for 20 years now. We just celebrated our 20th anniversary last year, and I work for the charity that owns and operates the museum in Canada. And so we support the museum and all of its activities from across the Atlantic. This museum is really unique in the sense that it's not just a D-Day museum, although we are on Juno Beach and we have that nice branding of the Juno Beach Center. Really, we're about the entire Canadian effort in the Second World War, which was substantial. 45,000 Canadians gave their lives during the Second World War, and in a population of about 11 million, 1.1 million served. So something like almost 10% of the population served, and most of those were volunteers. There were some conscripts towards the end of the war, but most of them were volunteers, which is incredible. Again, the site I'm standing on is the former German strongpoint. Captain Philip Gower of the Royal Winnipeg Rifles led his company ashore here on D-Day in the first wave. They took very heavy casualties. The duplex drive tanks were a little bit late getting in to support them. I think he had about 130 men going in, and when the day was over, and they mostly did all their fighting right around here in the dunes. They only had about 26 guys that were able for roll at the end. So about 80% casualties, and there were also some Royal Canadian Engineers with them that took heavy casualties as well. So a lot of Canadian blood shed over this ground. So we're really privileged to have our center here. The other thing I'd love to pay mention to for D-Day for Canada is the role of the Royal Canadian Air Force.
Yeah, let's wander over here because, I'm live now. So, you write about the air power. That's one of your things, and the closest representation we've got to anything to do with the air war here is the Bofors anti-aircraft gun. We can see the bunker there that the Juno Centre takes the groups through there, and the beach is just beyond us over there. So, as someone involved in the sharing of Canada's history, the air role can be a bit overlooked at times because it's a bit less tangible. You can't like the fleet. It's hard to imagine masses of ships when you can see fields that troops ran through and you can see the bunkers. So how do you go about explaining the role of the Air Force, the important role of the Air Force?
Yeah, as you know, Woody, it's pretty hard to do a battlefield tour about an air battle. Airfield
up there,
there somewhere, but maybe the airfields, the logistical points and everything are useful representations. At the museum this year, because it's also the 100th anniversary of the Royal Canadian Air Force, we did an exhibition on the RCAF in the Second World War. So it's all about the RCAF from the start of the war to the end of the war. Close to 250,000 Canadians that served in the Air Force. Not a very well-known fact, but between 22 and 25 Canadian airmen were actually killed on D-Day and supporting operations just on June 6th. And of course, there were many before D-Day in the shaping operations and many after D-Day in the shaping operations. To give you an example of one who was killed after D-Day, in the museum, and maybe Paul can get a couple of photos to share later, we actually have the parachute and pieces of a P-51 Mustang flown by a bit of an awkward last name, Francis Goring. He was an RCAF fighter pilot from Sarnia, Ontario. In August 1944, he was shot down just around Falaise doing an armed recce. and he was too low, and so he never got a chance to use that parachute, which is still mostly intact at the museum. And so we tell his story among many others, and that's kind of the beauty of this museum and being able to be out here in Normandy is we have a lot of aircraft parts on display from the Allies in particular during the summer of 1944.
And that's that ultimate. It's not a difficulty as such, but it's the quest to keep reminding people that it doesn't just kick off on the morning of June the 6th when boats are approaching the shore, and it doesn't end 24 hours later at the securing of the first part of the beachhead. It's a battle that has begun months earlier and will finish 76 days later. So this is the focus is, of course, June the 6th this week. But how do you and the team here manage to keep reminding people that you're not completing the story you're just starting the story? How do you manage that challenge?
I think for Canada, especially, Vimy Ridge is a good example of this. It's a gateway to understanding the rest of Canada's First World War. And I think D-Day for Canada is also a great way to understanding the rest of Canada's Second World War. It's just a starting point.
Yeah.
And once you see all the links, the Royal Canadian Navy's involvement, the Canadian Army, obviously, even the Canadian Army and what they're doing in Italy is still relevant to what's going on here. The Air Force, as we've mentioned, all these things come together. The home front and all the manufacturing and all the shipping that's going on, the Battle of the Atlantic, if that's not won, or at least in good hands before D-Day, you have a problem. And so I really think D-Day is a gateway to understanding the rest of the conflict, especially for Canada. And that's what we do. We try to use that as the step. You get one foot in the door, and then we drag you in the rest of the way.
Nothing happens in a vacuum, as Indy Nidell says. So while we're here, obviously they're setting up for ceremonies and things later today. But for those who've not been here before, there's lots of museums in Normandy of varying size and scale and with different kind of remits and objectives. But you can't help noticing these young people in the red tops walking around there, which is something pretty much unique to the Juno Center. So who are these people and how do they get here? There's one over there behind us there talking. So who are they?
So they're young Canadians, mostly students, definitely between kind of the ages of maybe 18 and mostly 28 or something like that. And it was very important to our founding veterans, because we were a museum that was founded by veterans, that there be young Canadians approximating the ages that they were when they were first here in 1944 to greet people, whether they be Canadian, whether they be French or other visitors, to have that friendly Canadian greeting. And that's the other side of it. It's part of it's passing the torch to future generations. So we have the youth active in doing that. The other part of it is the staff here is a mix between French and Canadian, and the youth really bring that Canadian flavor and that Canadian culture. So we have a lot of Canadian cultural events. July 1st will be Canada Day. There'll be a celebration here. We do an Acadian day in August as well, for those in Atlantic Canada who know all about that. And they really bring that culture here to here from Canada to the Juno Beach Center every year, and that's, we're really fortunate to have that program.
Yeah, and I like what you said about the passing of the torch, because the elephant in the room is accepting all of us that in future anniversaries there will not be participation of people who are here. Even the locals who were children will have passed away within 10, 20 years of where we are now. So it's going to only be told through the lens of people second, third, fourth, fifth generation. We're now taking great-grandchildren of veterans. So obviously you're one of the more perhaps foresighted museums, because you have this relationship with the French here. There's lots of input from across the Canada and young people and organizations. And how are you going to, it's a big question, but how are you going to bridge that gap? How are you going to take the history forward? Have you got plans in place for pushing the history forward into the next half of the 21st century effectively?
I think it's a big challenge. I think we're fairly well prepared to meet that challenge, insofar as this museum is meant for youth in particular. It's about 25% of our public are youth. We really appreciate having youth groups either from French high schools, French elementary schools, Canadian high schools, Canadian elementary schools come through. We have an entire youth circuit dedicated to them, so that they can learn kind of at their own pace and with a little bit of gamification and that sort of thing. So the youth is huge for what we do here, and we have a couple of programs. One is the guide program, which we've talked about. Another is we're trying to get it back up and running this year, the Summer Institute. And in that, what we do is we do a battlefield study tour with educators from Canada, high school teachers, because the idea, and this was, again, our founders, Garth Webb, who was our main founder, who landed near Bernier-sur-Mer with the 14th Field Regiment on D-Day. it was very important to him that we get the educators and we engage with them, because ultimately it's great to bring students over here, but we can have an even greater impact if we bring teachers over here, and then over subsequent generations in their classrooms, they can teach and they can maybe bring their students here. So with those two programs, we're fairly well positioned, but there's still plenty more to do.
And I like the fact with what the Juno Centre does is that you embrace the fact you're on the beach and you've got the bunkers there and there's the harbour over there where the fighting and everything happened, because you're incorporating the local community, the local area. So it's not just about the museum, it's about the museum as a starting point, and then go and see the bunkers, go and see the monuments, follow the trails, see the houses, the Canada House in Bernier-sur-Mer, those kind of things. And there are other museums we know of where it's like everything's in here, but you know, we're not kind of worried about what's just outside. But for an educator, for a tour group, the fact you can go from the displays inside to absolutely walking on the sand where people gave their lives, that's pretty extraordinary. I mean, and you've got future plans of improving the view towards the town. Whether you're going to share any of that now, if it's under wraps, but you know.
No, I can share a little bit. So just on kind of 180 from us, we have a nice sign beyond the flags there, and that marks the site of where the condo development was supposed to go in a couple of years ago on Juno Beach. And thanks to the efforts of people here in France and people in Canada who fought against that, the Canadian and French government stepped in and got rid of that threat to the museum and to our commemoration here in Normandy. And the good news is we've now developed a plan. It's going to be a commemorative landscaping project that really helps to open up the museum to the town. Is aligned with our sustainable development plan. Sustainable development is really important here at the Juno Beach Center, because we understand that, you know, the veterans fought and died for a peace, and we have to do well with that. It's not just the fact that they gave us the victory. We have to honor that victory by continuing to make the world a better place. And part of that right now is the environment and sustainable development. And so that's going to be part of it. We're going to connect all the pathways around this park so that people have a real circuit they can go through. There will be a small memorial as well honoring the Canadians who died on D-Day, as well as the Canadian effort pushing inland and then liberating the rest of Northwest Europe from Normandy to the Channel ports to Germany and the Netherlands and Belgium. So really excited about that, and we're just launching our capital campaign in Canada right this week.
Brilliant. Well, Alex, it's been great talking to you. I hope you catch up again. You've got a busy week ahead of you. It's going to be the usual incredible moments and moments of frustration with the crowds and numbers, but I offer you all my sincere good wishes for these few days, and thank you very much. I'll little walk around and video some more things for guests. But great, Alex, talking to you. I'll see you again, my friend. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Alex. So I'll just walk you around for a couple of minutes. I hope the audio wasn't too difficult there with the noise of this cool D-Day cool jazz going on. But, I don't get to the Juno Centre as much as I used to, because I'm not guiding as much as I used to. But for those who aren't here for the 80th, this is what you kind of thing you see. You see pipers there practicing for later on. There's a Vida Stones, there's the stage and the music for the D-Day cool jazz. Now it looks like the pipes are going to start up now in front of the monument here. A little bit of a practice. So, we love this time of year. We hate this time of year. It's all kind of going on. Here we go. This isn't planned. I didn't know this was going to happen. Well, that was rather cool. Oh, Canada, If you didn't know, that's the Canada's national anthem. I had no idea that was going to happen. That could not have been better timing. It's almost like I planned that, which I didn't. So yeah, Juno Center. I do recommend coming here. It's in the shape from the air of a maple leaf. So the titanium structure looks a bit odd from this angle, but from the air, it's a maple leaf. And I'll just show you, obviously, the 25-pounder. How can you not talk about the 25-pounder? The finest bit of field artillery ever fielded by any nation ever in combat, I would say. And you have the bricks. The funding for this, as Alex said 20 years ago, the funding was from all sorts of areas and corporations and commercial and requests from the public, and members of the public could pay for a brick. It's kind of a blue plaque in honor of a town or an individual, a fallen comrade. And I'll just show you some of these as we're walking around. So here we have, I'm just going up randomly here. So Private John Hill, Royal Regiment of Canada, 1942 to 1946, D-Day +2. Then there's a Royal Canadian Air Force 402 Squadron. Because these aren't people necessarily who always died in World War II. They are people who served and lived many years, or some of them died, some of them survived, had long lives. Some you could have the addition of an image, a photo, and so some are just sort of generic messages to "We will never forget." There. And not just Canadians. We mustn't forget that about 40% of troops on Juno Beach were British. The beach groups as well are here. The Air Force above is multinational. There are French aviators and Belgian, and Norwegian, and Danish, and the score. Interesting. This side, which is the side not facing the sea, a little bit less worn by the weather of the sometimes inclement Normandy winter weather. But that's it. I'm hoping to do another one or two of these little setup live streams during the day. It's all about keeping the battery of the camera going and the battery of the stabilizer going, and hopefully the audio is okay. But folks, that was a first part of today's transmission. So this is Paul Woodadge for World War II TV. Click subscribe if you haven't already, like, share, and I hope for those of you who aren't in Normandy, you get a sense of the occasion. Veterans, volunteers, tour groups, students, all here at the same time. So cheers, everybody. I will hopefully see you all again later on.